Hello all and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. This is Friday, October 22nd, 2021. I am Tom Stagg, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order at 1:02. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Sue Busenbark.
Here.
Ellie Cox.
Here.
Alice Creason.
Here.
Robin Hellenthal.
Here.
Diane Hollister. Chris Kenny.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Patricia Smith. Becky Spratford.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here. Still here.
I'm sorry.
Really here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Teppin.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
Karen Voidick.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And now on to recognition of guests and announcements. We will handle guest and public comments at the same time. Let's start with guest here in East Peoria.
Kendall Orson, Rails, I have no comment.
Okay, thank you, Kendall. Deidre, let's go move to the guest in Burr Ridge.
Sure, Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Ryan Heppel, Rails.
Joe Philippak, Rails.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Any public comments in Burr Ridge?
Nope.
Okay. How about the Illinois State Library?
Hi, this is Karen Egan from the Illinois State Library. No public comments yet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Emily, will you read the name of guests who are participating via Zoom?
Emily Feister, Rails. Monica Harris, Rails. Anna Duff, Rails. Mary Witt, Rails. Layla Heath, Rails. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. If Emily has not read your name, please state your name or your affiliation, or put it in the Zoom chat so that she can read it and add it to the minutes. Emily, did you receive any public comments via email?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any public comments at this time? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, the consent agenda. In that is 5.1, adoption of the agenda, 5.2, Rails board minutes of September 24th regular meeting, and 5.3, approval of disbursements of September 2021. Does anyone wish to move any item to the regular agenda for further discussion? If not, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved. Alex.
Alex, thank you, Alex. Second?
Second. Alice, second.
Okay, Alice, thank you. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No? Okay, motion carried. Next we have Sharon Swanson with the Rails financial report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please feel free to ask any questions about anything that I do or don't cover, but I'm just going to cover a few of the highlights of September. So the September 30th general fund cash and investment balance was 18.6 million and would fund approximately 19.4 months of operations. Revenues through September were just a little over 1.35 million, and they were 2.3 million under budget, primarily due to not having received any area and per capita grant payments through September. But October 1st, we received our first payment from the general fund. in the amount of $1,614,386. And looking at the comptroller's vendor payment portal, it looks like we have 3 additional vouchers for the first 3 of 6 of the live and learn payments, and these total $3,217,500, which we expect to be paid out very, very soon, given the current payment timeline of the comptroller. And other grant news: on October 6th, Rails was officially awarded 2 additional grants above and beyond the area and per capita grants. These included grants for the ongoing development of L2 in the amount of $70,356, as well as another grant to support the specialized cataloging activity that Rails has budgeted in the amount of $94,050. Both of these projects were budgeted in the general fund, and as Rails had not yet applied for any of these grants when the budget was finalized, the revenues from these grants will be applied to the general fund to offset these budgeted expenditures. Ongoing theme: investment income. We are currently at 54% below the budgeted amount, as both Illinois funds and Hinsdale Bank money market rates are remaining below the rates that were budgeted, well below the rates. We're currently exploring other investment options, namely PMA iPrime long-term duration series. These focus on investments that are between mid and longer term, 1 to 2 year investments, and they're laddered for maturities, and they're designed to keep rates stabilized and maximize them during the current downturn that we're experiencing. So more to come on that this next board meeting. We're hoping to bring a recommendation. There will be more to come on that. Expenditures through September of just a little over $3.2 million were nearly $156,000 below budget. All major expenditure categories were below budget, with the key exception of computers, supplies, and postage. And that was due to the laptop purchase that was completed in August, the $125,000 laptop purchase. And that's pretty much all that I had to highlight. Does anyone have any questions?
I just want to second the PMA. We use at LaGrange, we do that, the PMA, and we've been using it for years, and it has been extremely helpful. And it's very stable, and they work with us to make sure that our money is available when we need the disbursements.
Yes, and we would only be focusing on putting money in there that we wouldn't need for a year,
Exactly.
because these are longer term.
That's exactly
Yes.
what we do too. Yes.
Yeah,
It's been great.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Sharon. So let's move on to item 7.1, report from the Rails president. I have asked Robin Helmthal to chair the advocacy committee since Jenna has resigned. The executive committee report will be given later in the agenda, and I will give the consortia report now. The consortia committee met on Monday, October 18th, and Ann Craig reported on the Open Education Resources grant that Carly received. The grant award allows Carly to develop 8 textbooks along with the ancillary materials that improve student success. The committee also heard from a member of the OCLC task force who discovers the efforts to engage with OCLC about concerns, and the ICOLC membership shares around pricing, cost transparency, WorldCat sustainability and interoperability, marketplace, and culture. It was a very interesting discussion. The committee also amended the LSAP Sustainability Working Group charge to now include a member from each consortium. The LSAP Sustainability Working Group has now met 3 times. They received a historical funding background from the Illinois State Library, identified priorities, and heard from the IHL, the Heartland staff about LSAP support and the shared governance. On Monday, staff from Autographics, the Findmore, Illinois software vendor, highlighted the benefits of their cataloging tool. The working group plans to meet monthly through March. The EDI Policy, Resource Sharing, and Universal Services Committee have not met since our last board meeting. The Advocacy Committee has not met as well. That sort of takes care of all of our committees then. Correct?
Yes.
Moving on to Deidre with the Rails report.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Well, I first want to acknowledge that today we received a lovely gift package from the Heartland staff as a congratulations for winning the Atkinson Award. So we really appreciate that. And we've all been partaking of that. So that was very nice, very unexpected. Let's see. Okay, so in my written report, first at the very first item, the legislative proposals. Very unfortunately, in my opinion, the ILA did not vote to include either the statewide databases or the expansion of library cards for kids, unserved kids, or removal of barriers for public library mergers in their legislative agenda. They're focusing on broadband access, which I'm not saying that's not important. It's absolutely important. And then equitable pricing for ebooks, which would be not any sort of budget proposal, it's just a statement of, which is, statements are good too. I think that I understand their reasoning was that they didn't feel that they should ask for two budget proposals, budget additions, additional funding. But on the other hand, in my opinion, it's strike while the iron is hot, and there's money to be had these days. So we will continue our advocacy efforts. So it's too bad.
Deidre, would you say that they're interested in maybe just like deferring support for a year or something like that? Or is it like to start the whole process again of elevating the issue? And I mean, do they kind of pipeline these things out a couple of years and say, this is next? Or
yes, hopefully. I would say in this case, and I mean, I want to make it clear too, it's not that they are going to say, no, they don't support these items. I mean, we're going to continue our advocacy.
Right.
It's a new group every year that decides. So who knows, right? Okay. Senator Laura Murphy, as I think I reported maybe last month, we met with Gail Bush and I, who used to be on the Rails board and is on the board of Oakton Community College, and which is in Senator Murphy's district. She has promised to file. She really believes in expanding the cards for kids. And she really was very excited about the database, and she promised to file both of those in January. So we're sticking with that.
Regardless of ILA support.
Yep.
Okay.
And ILA knows that. So let's see, what else did I want to tell you? Oh yeah, so we've started our interviews for the Rails Director of Finance. So that's good, moving that forward. I just wanted to note before this meeting we had a special meeting for the board to do some brainstorming related to the strategic plan, and rural library support for rural libraries came up. I just wanted to point out that we are in the process of establishing an email list for ILA's Small and Rural Libraries Forum and helping them to acquire a Zoom license through Rails, which we do provide to all of these networking groups so that they can meet effectively. So, we're trying. You're going to be hearing a lot more lately about EDI, but we've been doing incredible training programs related to that as well. So that is all I have for you. Any questions?
No
Okay, over to you,
questions?
Tom.
Okay. Next up are Joe and Monica with the service of the month. Update on Rails EDI initiatives.
Take it away, Joe.
It's a full house. I don't remember the last time I could say it. So usually the last 2 years I've been able to take up a whole side. So, so good afternoon, everybody. Just want to share my screen here. Yes, Monica and I are going to give you a bit of an update on the on our EDI initiative here at Rails. And I know in your packet, Monica has provided just a brief kind of summary of things, but we want to just talk to you a little more about what those things are. Okay, cool. So first of all, I'll say that we did invite Biz Lindsay Ryan to join us today. She is always happy to talk to this group, to this board, and she's out of town this afternoon, but she wanted the board to know that she's always happy to come at a later date if you want to hear more from her about it.
I think she's going to come in January.
Yeah, that's right.
I think she
That's
put
right.
it on her calendar because I think that would be great. Yeah.
And honestly, she probably attends more Rails meetings than many of the staff do. We keep her very busy.
Yeah.
So a few things, in terms of training for Rails staff, we recognized very early on that we could not be leaders in this area for our members without kind of having our own house in order, as it were, and for our staff to really have an understanding of the terminology and everything that pertains to EDI. So we really prioritize wanting to give staff training in this area. So beginning, I guess, about a year ago, we were requiring kind of two mandatory staff trainings that all Rails staff would participate in. And you can see on the screen, there's a few different topics. The first of which was just kind of this introductory EDI training. It's 4 hours via Zoom, which is 4 hours on Zoom. So we recognize that's not ideal, although I guess you guys are in meetings maybe 4 hours today between strategic planning and this board meeting, but it is what it is. The last training we did back in the spring really focused on gender. You can see there's socialization norms, et cetera. And then our next round of training is going to begin next week. And that's going to be focused really on relationships and as Biz describes them, the sort of big five. All of this obviously coming through an EDI lens. To accommodate delivery staff, and we know that just logistically it's hard for our delivery staff. So we kind of set these up with 2 different dates, and then we kind of stagger and have half staff do one, half staff do the other. So in addition to those trainings for staff, we of course encourage our staff to participate in the member training events. In a moment, I'll talk about the EDI grants and the events that are taking place through those. And we've encouraged staff to attend those. And then of course, outside learning opportunities. ILA conference last week. I mean, every day there were a number of EDI training opportunities. So encouraging staff to attend those as well. So that's sort of one aspect is the Rails, specifically for Rails staff. The climate team, there is sort of the charge or description. This is a team made up of Deirdre, myself, and 8 others from across the organization, different departments all being represented. As you can see, recognizing solving problems related to EDI, taking ownership responsibility for positive climate within Rails. We have been meeting monthly for about the last year. And the focus has really been on, I don't know why I'm forcing you to like tilt your head to read that. So if you have a sore neck because of me, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. Focusing on these kind of 4 relationship facets and having a sort of intentional approach in identifying challenges and opportunities and really just concept ideas within these relationship facets that we want to advance as an organization. So some examples being when we think about our members, particularly with training, what can we do to support things like libraries' efforts to diversify their workforce and to be accountable? Again, all of this through an EDI lens. When we think about our partners, this being the vendors we work with, the various kind of statewide organizations that Rails works with, how do we think about how we select those partners and hold them accountable, and what are our expectations, again, as it relates to elements of equity, diversity, inclusion. The Rails board, when we think about the recruitment for this board and the composition of this board, what can we do to make sure that it is a representative body? And then staff, everything internal. So whether we're talking about hiring, retention, engagement, what are the things that we need to be thinking about internally to build a climate that is aspiring to do all those things related to EDI and being inclusive. So we are at a phase in this so that we've kind of identified various projects we'd like to do, which is some combination of looking at policies, processes, potentially tools like rubrics that we could use, whether through a hiring practice or again, as we select vendors, and are now kind of at this phase of working towards these projects. So again, this will be probably the activity of the climate team in the coming months is really going to be project focused now. I know Monica, before Monica, we also have these EDI training grants that I alluded to. We've awarded about $10,000 to libraries, networking groups, and consortia who had EDI-focused training events that they wanted to implement but needed financial support to do. So we have had a total of 6 so far, with about 1,200 members participating to date. 3 or 4 more remaining in the months ahead. Been really pleased with both diversity of the topics and diversity of the people, the presenters that are doing these trainings, which was another sort of outcome that we wanted to see. And finally, as you see, it's winter, spring, the second round, really looking at maybe if we want to offer another round of these grants because they've been so successful. I know Monica out there was going to say a few words about the Rails EDI Board Committee. Monica?
Thank you, Joe. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. So as Joe mentioned, so a lot of these internal processes were all things that we really began in earnest back in fall of 2020. And in our reports to the board about the process with the training program and with the climate team established, the board also expressed interest and expressing the importance of making sure that there was a board committee that was also focused on these important issues. So back in our first meeting of the EDI Board Committee after it was established was in December of 2020, and it is made up of a mixture of Rails board members and then also Rails membership, as well as staff ex officio. That group began by really talking about their own concerns and their own focuses in terms of EDI. And so that really led us as a group towards being able to set a charge and set priorities and projects. So what you see here are just what the committee established as the 3 main goals in terms of their committee charge. And that's identifying barriers in libraries in the library field and solutions to eliminate them, develop ideas and programs to increase awareness about systemic racism and bias among member libraries, staff, and boards, and facilitate system-wide discussion about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So, of course, these are huge goals, just like anything with this work, that this is a big thing to be looking at. And so we did a little bit more in terms of the opportunity for this group to really look at these. Joe, can we go to the next slide? So what ended up being established out of that process and out of the priorities that were then looked at and set by the committee was a way to really divide the work into 3 subcommittees. So what was very important to this group in the beginning was that they had identified that they had 2 goals in terms of 1, receiving training to make sure that they all understood these issues and that they could make sure that they were all coming in sort of a level playing field to really understand the needs of the committee. And that's when we really started to bring Biz more into the work of the Rails EDI Board Committee, along with the work that she was doing internally for the Rails staff. And 3 subcommittees were established in spring of 2021. That included a subcommittee on programs and outreach, a subcommittee on recruitment, hiring, and retention, and then a subcommittee on staff training, leadership, and advocacy. And those 3 subcommittees are also all, they have co-conveners, which are made up of Rails membership, and then they also have a staff ex officio who helps to lead those processes. Those 3 groups were they were all focused on projects. So there are 3 projects that have been sort of in stages since spring of 2021. And so in the program services and outreach subcommittee, that group is working on a presenter tool that will be able to compile presenters, both in terms of those who do staff trainings as it relates to EDI, and also presenters who identify as being from marginalized communities, and so that there's an opportunity for libraries to be able to know presenters that they might want to hire for recreational programming. The recruitment, hiring, and retention group are putting together a toolkit that includes sample job ads and job descriptions, best practice interview questions, et cetera, that are all related to best practice in terms of EDI focus. And then the staff training, leadership, and advocacy program are putting together a toolkit that includes resources on using an equity lens and bystander intervention training, along with some other opportunities for training. So these groups have been hard at work, and we have learned a lot through these processes and working with these subcommittees and their regular meetings. As we have also continued through the Rails EDI Board Committee over the last year, we were approached by the BIPOC Networking Group about having a liaison to the Rails EDI Committee, which the group did vote that they wanted to have a liaison. And so now we have a full liaison to the Rails EDI Board Committee that is also part of the BIPOC Networking Group. So that's sort of the progress in terms of what's happened with that group. There are, of course, outside of these efforts that Joe has highlighted as well, and the board committee that I spoke about today, some other efforts that are happening around EDI, and these are just a few. If you haven't had a chance to look at the EDI Pulse page, it's a great place to see a lot of information shared that you can really kind of go through and look and see what is happening in Illinois and what is happening in the library field, as well as resources that might be helpful to you or your library. A Rails EDI mailing list was also established where people are sharing information with one another in terms of best practice around EDI work. And we also have a curated group of ebook collections. So eRead Access 360 does include a list of racial justice titles that are available, and you can find that list on the Pulse page, as well as our census collection that was purchased back as part of the census grant, which does include EDI focused titles. Those were originally part of our BiblioBoard collection, and they are transitioning to our eRead Illinois Access 360 collection soon. Next slide, please, do. And then, there's a lot going on. And one of the things that I think has been very helpful to me in terms of this process is just in talking to Biz Lindsay Ryan. She has really made it very clear that this is a process that takes time, and that there's a lot to do, and a lot of effort and a lot of interest from our membership and community to be able to make a difference in the work that we're doing. But the best thing that we can do is to provide consistent and steady effort, and to understand that sometimes this process is slow. That said, I just want to be able to share with you some of the things that are coming up around EDI, in addition to some of the efforts that were highlighted for you here. One is the development of a member training cohort that we're hoping to be able to launch in 2022 that would include an opportunity for Rails members to be able to learn along with a training program that would allow them to learn together and work together towards better EDI practices. EDI and our Rails strategic planning collaboration. We brought Biz together with Stephanie and Cindy to talk more about how those processes are aligned, and to make sure that we are putting all of our efforts into making sure that the work that we're doing in EDI does not go unseen and unacknowledged in terms of the strategic planning work that we're doing, because we believe that they are really intrinsically tied together. So we're making sure that those efforts are happening moving forward. There is a new focus for the EDI Board Committee for 2022. And so that committee has been together for about a year. And so in this year, we've learned a lot. And while we believe that the project work that is happening and moving forward from those subcommittees is really important, the committee has really expressed a desire to do more training and more opportunity to learn together, to make sure that they really are all at a common ground in terms of understanding EDI issues. So we are focusing on more training in 2022, and we are very excited to be able to work together with the group on that. There are also many efforts that are happening in Illinois that we want to make sure are acknowledged. One of them is this DEI and metadata networking group that's getting ready to launch. That leadership includes representation from CCS, SWAN, and Rails' own Nancy George. But this is an exciting effort that will allow for best practice in terms of cataloging and metadata as it relates to EDI issues. And then another thing that's coming up is our diversity audit of our eRead Illinois Access 360 collection in 2022 with a new product that will be available from Baker & Taylor. So a lot of things going on here. And I know we kind of put a lot into a short period of time, but I will ask, do you have any questions for Joe or for myself around the EDI work happening at Rails?
All right.
Great
No
report.
questions?
Well, thank you, everybody. And obviously there'll be future updates to come. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe and Monica. And now on to Karen Egan at the Illinois State Library. Good morning, good afternoon, Karen.
Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon. And I bring greetings from Secretary White and Director McCormick. Said to say hello. We are really excited that the award letters were mailed last week to 211 libraries across the state for projects to support pandemic recovery. Now, the state library received about $4.7 million in the Federal American Rescue Act Plan dollars from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And the decision was made to use 100% of that money for direct grants to libraries. And Secretary White felt so compelled by the applications that he added an additional $1 million from LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act funds, and state technology money to maximize the impact statewide. So we awarded about $5.7 million total in pandemic recovery grants. Now there were three categories if you weren't aware. The bouncing back from the pandemic grants supported workforce recovery. These projects are a specific response to the high number of jobs lost as a result of the COVID pandemic, and awards are positioning libraries to purchase resources and services that support job seekers. Expanding digital access support the restoration of library services and libraries took this opportunity to really look at devices that circulate. From tools for do-it-yourselfers who were home or working remotely during the pandemic and remodeling their home, to the parents who were suddenly working remotely and discovered that the only computer they could use was the computer their child was assigned from the school, and so they were using that in order to do their work while in the evenings when their child wasn't in remote school. So a lot of devices being circulated. The third offering was On the Road to Recovery, which allowed for transformation of library spaces and in library services to build the internal capacity to keep libraries safe. We were amazed at the applications that came in through that. We even had a couple libraries. Do you remember the Gates grants from, decades ago? We had a couple libraries that were actually replacing their Gates computers for the first time in an effort to upgrade and improve services. So what about Rails libraries? Well, in Rails, 130 libraries received grant awards, impacting, are you ready for this? 113 communities across your service area. 3 special libraries, 10 academic libraries, 26 school districts, and 91 public libraries received grant awards in Rails. $3 million to $3,292,576 were awarded to Rails libraries, and awards range from $5,000 to $500,000. The average grant in Rails was $25,328, just for those of you keeping track. Now, we are really looking forward to hearing about the benefits for the people served as your libraries take steps to really help with pandemic recovery across the area. It'll be exciting to see the results of these. The school district library grants closed last week. The applications and the expenditures are still being processed, and it's too early to know any totals yet. But last year, during the pandemic, 649 public school districts received about 1.4 million. And we're hoping that now that schools are back in session, that number will increase this year. The Public Library per Capita Grant and Equalization Aid Grant is open, and applications are due January 15th. The application has changed slightly from last year to fix a couple formatting issues, but again, the libraries are being asked to review the entirety of Serving Our Public 4.0, the standards for Illinois public libraries, and to document progress towards meeting the standards as required by statute. Now, just as the Rails board agenda includes board development every month, we really recommend that public library boards add 1 or 2 chapters of the standards to their board meeting agenda every month, just throughout the year, to have an ongoing discussion about library services and operations in relationship to the standard, so that they are having those discussions throughout the year. The 2020 census data for municipalities has been certified. And Jake Magnuson in our office can help if you are a municipal library and you'd like to know what your certified population is, or county clerks now have this information also, from what we understand. Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville is under contract right now to work on a library services area map. And this map is based on libraries' boundaries, and it will overlay the census data, the data tracks, and provide an electronic solution for calculating populations. Now, if you're a municipality, that's not so critical, but if you are a district and your district takes in this subdivision or this subdivision or this little part of the next county, then it becomes an issue. And this will be extremely helpful for public library districts that do not align with a municipality. It will also have value added as additional census data will be added to it, so that you can look at areas of your population served and look at specific demographics per census tract. That'll be very exciting for being able to provide services going forward and identify those specific niches or areas of population base. The completed map will be ready later this fall. They said November, so we're saying later this fall. Now, if a library chooses to submit their public library per capita grant now, but does not have the certified 2020 populations, that's okay. Just continue to use the 2010 certified population on the application. All populations will be verified and updated if necessary before the grants are actually awarded. Our intent is that as this data is certified, we will provide that information back to the public libraries. Also, the state library is currently accepting applications for the fiscal year 22 Live and Learn Construction Grant Program. And those applications are also due on January 15th. There is a webinar with more information posted on the state library website if your library is interested in that construction program. Also, for for the first time in 2020, for the first time in 8 years, the General Assembly appropriated, as you know, $50 million to the Public Library Construction Act grant program. And to date, the state library has awarded 16 grants totaling just over $30.3 million. Now, Chicago Public Library is entitled to 10% of the appropriation. So that leaves roughly $9.6 million left to be awarded. And we've notified 9 libraries that applied for the FY22 offering of their eligibility, and we expect to award the remaining of that money later this year. Unfortunately, the General Assembly has not added more money to that pot since 2020. However, we do accept applications under that program annually by April 15th, should money be added, so that that library is first in line and would be first in line for the funding once everything is determined. So at this point, do you have any questions for me about anything going on at the state library? We are all about grants right now, as you can tell.
I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is even the appropriate funding source, but is it possible to get more? Like we got the $125,000 for the EDI or eRead Illinois Access 360. Is that a possibility?
That is a good question. At this point, all of the funds that were awarded under that grant program have been issued, and we are, this is October, so at this point, we're looking at where we stand in money left over. And I have to tell you, one of the things that's really important, I know Rails does a really good job on this, thank you very much, but we're looking at libraries where they say, oh, we didn't spend that last $200, or there's, $1,000 left that we're not going to be able to spend. Well, then don't ask for it, because we could have awarded it to somebody else. Because at this point, that drives me crazy, but that's off on another tangent. Spend all of the money if you ever get a grant. Promise me that. So I do not know if we have extra money to do another ebook grant, is the bottom line. There's not an open offering at this time.
Maybe you'll have enough left over, or thank you, Beth. I'm sure Harlan would be thrilled as well. So I have a question, Karen, about OCLC. I emailed you. I was going to ask you this. We had a lot of conversation about OCLC the other day, Monday, and one of the questions that really was not satisfactorily, at least to me, answered was, what is the status of the RFP? I mean, there used to be a very active process, I know, because I was engaged in it at least once, where a group got together and, different vendors bid on the services that are related to cataloging and interlibrary loan in Illinois. But I don't feel like that's going on in the same way that it used to go on. And I know at one point it was possible to just extend the contract for another year or two under the terms of the contract. So if you could just clarify where we are with that, I'd appreciate it.
That's a really good question, Dee. And I can give you a little bit, just enough to hopefully reassure you that the state library is required to follow the procurement policy for the state. And that does include issuing RFP for contracts such as OCLC, that does OCLC services. That also includes, for example, Counting Opinions, who is providing the platform for the Illinois Public Library Annual Report and the Illinois Interlibrary Loan Traffic Survey. We do issue RFPs for those. As you know, the last time the RFP was issued, OCLC received the contract for OCLC services. And those contracts do have options to renew. I think it's twice. I could be wrong on that. but those options to renew are in there. And at some point, the RFP will come up for bid. There may be 2 more years on that contract. Greg will know that for sure, but it will have to go out for an RFP again at that time.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, there is an active RFP process in place that we do follow for OCLC services.
Right. I knew it wasn't happening every year in the same way,
Right, and a lot of times that
solicitation.
contract is issued for 2, maybe, I think it's 2 years,
Right.
and then they've got a couple options to renew.
Right. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Anything else from the board? Any questions I can answer for you?
I guess
Okay,
there is
well,
none.
thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Karen. That was a lot of exciting news from the state library. That's those numbers are awful impressive of how much money that the Rails Library's got. That's great news. Thanks again, Karen. Have a wonderful day. Next up is new business. The executive committee recommendation on filling the vacancy of Jenna Luisi's departure. The executive committee met 3 times in the past couple of weeks. Our first meeting, we reviewed the candidates and the interview questions. We decided to offer all 4 candidates an interview. Though 1 candidate declined due to the time commitment to the board. School librarians are so busy, the candidate declined. All 3 candidates interviewed well and would make excellent additions to the Rails board. The board selected Monica Tolba from the Vernon Hills High School. We asked another candidate, Janine Asmus from Leiden School District, to serve on the advocacy committee, to which she has accepted. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, if none, may I have a motion to accept the executive committee recommendation and appoint Monica Tolba to the school library seat of the Rails board?
This is Scott. I'll make that motion.
Okay, Scott, Sue.
I'll second.
Okay, Scott first and Sue second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The motion carries. Next up is revision of vaccination policy. Monica.
Can I just say something? I'm sorry. I do think we need to do roll call votes. Right?
We're all in service.
We do. So, I mean, you don't necessarily need to do it.
We do not need to do roll call votes because we have enough people in person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think
That's good to know. Okay. I did not know that that was a possibility. So thank you, Emily. Okay.
Yes, you know.
Proceed.
We want to make sure it's all legal because that was a big deal.
Well, thank you, Deirdre. And so you all received in your packet an update, including a memo of the draft vaccination policy, the draft vaccination procedures, as well as an example of what the previous vaccination policy that was approved by the board in June of 2021 was. So we included in the memo just a description of what some of those changes might be. So that includes the decision to really try to make this process a bit more straightforward. We all know that some of the recommendations that are coming via COVID come fast and furious, and we have to be able to respond to them quickly and make sure that we're offering best practice that we can in Rails. So our intention was to offer a policy that was a bit more general in terms of the Rails perspective around our vaccination policy. And then the procedural document will cover the actual details in terms of how those things will be implemented. The overall changes were detailed in the memo, but you should see that example in the last one if you were looking for the example of what the last policy was. And I'm wondering if any of you have any questions about either the new procedural document or the updated policy.
Any questions? Okay. Apparently you spelled it out really good there, Monica.
Thanks, Tom.
I have a motion and a second to approve the changes to the vaccination policy and procedures.
So moved. Hallie.
Second, Alex.
Okay, Hallie, thank you. Second?
That was Hallie and then Alex.
Hallie and Alex. Okay, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries. Okay, let's.
Can I make a comment? Tom, can I make a comment real
Sure.
fast? This is kind of an example of what we were talking about this morning in strategic planning. I hope this serves as an example so that our member libraries start doing policies like this. I happen to be very blessed that our library had a 100% vaccination rate voluntarily, but I hope by Rails doing this now, every library who's a member of us will follow suit and have the similar vaccination mandatory policy.
Thank you,
That's my
Becky.
hope.
And I should note something that I didn't say in the memo is that we consulted not only with Ansel Glink, which we did say in the memo, but also with the state library and with Heartland, just to make sure that our policies were as much as possible in alignment. And so this is a policy you'll see in terms of the mandatory vaccination with the testing policy across all three organizations.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if not, let's take our break now. Please, everyone, be ready to start again at 2:10.
Okey doke.
Thank you.
Okey doke. Where's that?
Okay.
Sorry,
We're
guys.
back. We're back and resuming the Rails board meeting at 2:10 p.m. We'll go on to unfinished business. Deidre?
Yes, thank you. So I finally was put together a draft statement on universal library service to come from the Rails board. This goes back a ways, number of months. I apologize for the delay, but the Universal Service Committee at not their most recent meeting, but at a meeting this year, asked that and Sue can speak to this obviously as well. And I did run this by Sue, the committee chair as well. The committee said that, these incremental, projects to fix universal service are fine, but that there does need to be a statewide collaborative effort led by the state library. And so the committee asked the board to sort of, make a statement to that effect and officially ask the state library to, put together a group, a plan, a process, et cetera. So that's what this is about. So happy to discuss, make changes, et cetera. And those of you who are on the committee, Jennifer, Sue, are you on the committee, Becky?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if there's others. Please chime in.
I'm not on the committee, but I think I find this thrilling.
Okay, good.
Because-
Wow.
because, you know, it's like, sometimes I think that librarians were our own worst enemies. We keep finding ways to get things done or to solve problems without addressing the root problem. And I think this is saying, okay, whatever, we can just keep doing these other things, but let's address the root problem and go after that. So.
And you've been saying that for a while.
Yeah.
And I joined the committee and they hadn't met in a while. And I was shocked at my first meeting to see how much we'd done that had been great, but done so little. And so I definitely was one of the voices saying we need it to be stronger. And I think this is plenty strong. And I especially like the very last paragraph.
I particularly like how you emphasize how long it's been that the issue has been unresolved, and that there really was a clear mandate for us to have been dealing with this all along. It really feels incredibly overdue, and it really reflects the importance of dealing with unfinished business. This isn't some new idea that's coming. It really feels like
it's really been coming up from the members, as you guys heard this morning too. Town halls.
Well, as we said in our committee, we've discussed how COVID made it clear the haves and the have-nots so much more. And yes, I loved seeing it. And in fact, I wished Stephanie had pointed it out more, because universal services was just as big as some other things. It was just written like 4 different ways. Yeah. And I was sort of disappointed she didn't highlight that.
Oh, we'll tell her that. That's
good. I didn't want to say anything during her presentation to like undermine her.
Right.
But I saw it there, and it was there just as much as rural, and it goes with that too. Right. So anyway, that was.
This is Sue, and I just want to take this time to thank Dee for composing this statement. And like we said before, or like has been mentioned, it has been well over 50 years since this has been a concern, but has always seemed to have died in committee and never really gotten anywhere. And Dee really has, like I said before, Dee taken the bull by the horns and kind of led us in the right direction, and hopefully under the guidance of the state library, we'll be able to get this even further along. So thank you again.
Sure, it's very important to me too.
I know.
And I guess what I would do is, ask for the board to vote that, that you approve this, and I'll
make a motion that we approve this statement.
I'll second it, Becky.
Thank you, Scott and Becky. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries.
All right, I'll get to work on it.
Okay. Thank you. Up next is Joe with Board
Joe's
Development.
back.
Joe's back.
The Joe Show.
All right. Hello again. Hello. Hope you've all been well since I saw you last. Yes, I've been asked to just share a little bit ideas, thoughts on how you as Rails board members can be, take advantage of training opportunities and just network engagement. And I tried to broaden this to not just you as Rails board members, but I know several of you are, trustees at your library, maybe directors that work with board members. So just trying to think just generally about being a board member and how you can take advantage of the various opportunities that are out there. So let me share my screen one more time. So I guess I think about this in a few different buckets for, I guess, specifically. The first up there in the upper left-hand corner, Rails Trustee Resources. So these are resources that I probably would have shared during, if you went through the orientation, the different resources we have to support trustee education. Obviously, short takes for trustees is something we've had for quite a while, particularly for new trustees. There are the trustee focused webinars and workshops, so things on, Open Meetings Act, FOIA, budgeting, and other issues that are really, related to being on a board, policy setting, et cetera. hopefully some of you, I know some of you, and hopefully all of you at some point will take advantage of the trustee online roundtables that Dan started and I've been working with on, to bring in different speakers and then have an opportunity to talk to trustees, obviously in a virtual environment, but that's something new for us, and we've had good reception, I would say, for something new, and we hope to continue those. I know that, I think Dee has mentioned this trustee university concept before, taking what we do for Directors University and knowing there's such a need for trustee education and do something more intentional, not quite as immersive as Directors University, understanding we're working with volunteers. Becky, I know you shared the concept like what Wisconsin does of kind of a week-long every day at noon trustee education, and then doing something that's also online on demand, knowing that, you know, a lot of trustees obviously have jobs like all of you, and it's difficult. So we have to approach it in a lot of different ways and give board members different opportunities to engage. So that's kind of the Rails trustee focus, resource focus. I think that sometimes one thing we do when we talk about board education is we talk about it as like this separate thing. And I think sometimes we do a disservice by doing that. I mean, there's certain board trustee training that is, you know, focused for that group, but ultimately anything that is of interest to members and interest to our library should be interested to board members. So I think then in the upper right-hand corner, when we just talk about Rails services and opportunities, thinking about all the Rails CE that we offer, whether it's focused to trustees or not, I think are ways for you to know what are the trends that our libraries are thinking about and having to deal with one way or the other. Hopefully you attend our member updates because you're going to hear from a lot of our members and hear, again, what are their concerns. I think these strategic planning town hall meetings are a great opportunity as you are all involved with this process, but to hear from our members firsthand. And obviously we're not doing networking events. You know, Dan, the networking events he was doing pre-pandemic, I know trustees would come out for a chance to talk to one another and to talk to library staff, and then just our regular member communications. Again, I don't think we need to think of it as what is, you know, looking at what is the thing that says this is for trustees specifically. Ultimately, if it's for libraries, you should consider it for you as well. There are the statewide opportunities. The Illinois State Library makes a number of resources available on their website. Obviously, the ILA conference, which we just had last week, there were a number of sessions that were trustee focused, but again, all those sessions, a lot of sessions related to EDI, budgeting and so forth, all very relevant for you. The ILA Trustee Forum, where our board president is the president-elect for the ILA Trustee Forum, is another avenue for trustees to network and engage and learn. That is a forum, again, through the Illinois Library Association. So Tom will be able to be a resource for you as it relates to the trustee forum. We have the legislative meetups coming. I believe they start in February. And again, in normal times, it's a wonderful networking opportunity. We lose a bit of that with the Zoom, or actually a lot of it with the Zoom environment for these legislative meetups, but it's still a networking opportunity. And of course, in addition to ILA, the conferences, IACRL, IL, SLA, Special Library Association Illinois, all have different opportunities for networking and connecting, depending where your interest lies. And then the local and national. Hopefully you're aware of United for Libraries, division of ALA that's really focused on board education, the various national conferences. And then I just, you know, thinking about local library events and programs. I, a few weeks ago, attended at the Bolingbrook, Fountaindale Public Library in Bolingbrook, an event for one of their retiring library trustees, Peggy Danhoff. They were dedicating their meeting room to them. And there were so many board members from other libraries and staff members from other libraries. So sometimes those local library events can be a great opportunity to connect with one another. So that's kind of what I wanted to share. I would invite any of you, if there are particular things not up here that have worked for you in terms of networking or education, I'd certainly invite you to share those. Otherwise, if there's any questions about any of this now or later, feel free to reach out to me.
In terms of the trustee university too, that is something that we want to start working on in conjunction with ILA, IHLS, and the state library. Not sure what the model will be, but I think we all know that it would be great if we could somehow get some time with newly elected trustees. I think that would be one of the first goals.
Definitely.
Big goal,
but needed. We know that.
Really.
Joe, if I may, the ILA trustee forum, we are looking for new members. If anyone is interested in that group, and you can go to the ILA trustee forum page on the ILA website. There is information about the forum and an application there. So, any questions for Joe?
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Joe, I think one other opportunity is meeting with your local IL chapter in your area. I know we have one in Central Illinois. Monica talked to them yesterday, and they're always open for more interest in their school libraries.
Yeah.
How local are the chapters? Are they by county? Are they?
I think it depends. But I think more or less, most of them, I think.
Because I didn't know there was even more smaller chapters than the statewide one. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have, if you go to the website.
Okay.
And I don't know, do you know anything about them, Beth? They tend to be, I think, kind of like grassrootsy development.
Yeah, that was my sense of it.
Ours has 4 counties represented in it down here in Central Illinois.
So maybe not the entire state falls within
No, I would say definitely not.
Okay.
Well, some of us are going to the IL meeting next week, so we will see.
Yeah, can you ask? That'd be great.
Yep.
And then the IL conference in just a couple weeks down in Champaign.
Yeah, in the beginning of November.
Right, that's what I mean. In a couple weeks.
That'd be great.
It is almost November.
Yeah.
It's like I volunteer at an actual school library, but it's a district that every building has a degree librarian.
Yeah.
So, but I know in my area, in Rails, there are others that don't. So,
right.
I would love to help them.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, everybody.
Now it's time for the Rails board member reports. Does anyone have news they would like to share about their area or library?
This is Sue, and Kiwani did a strategic plan this past summer, and one of the things that came out of our focus groups, loud and clear, was the hours for our working patrons. So what Kiwani has done, we have regular hours Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 to 6. But on Tuesdays, we're now calling it Tuesdays on Tremont. Kiwani Library is located on Tremont Street. And the library doesn't open until noon and stays open now until 8. Pre-pandemic, we had hours until about 7, but since the pandemic, we've never gone back to those hours. So I think it's being received fairly well. We have some little mini workshops that are incorporated along with this on Tuesday evenings. And so that was something that really came out of the focus groups that was a concern. And so we've hopefully made some people happy. So.
Well, good.
Great, Sue.
Yeah. Barbara Love was very instrumental in getting that all taken care of, our director. So she's
Good.
nice
Good.
job with that.
So anything else anyone wants to share? Okay. Item 12, meeting recap and agenda building for next rail board meeting. Recapping today's meeting, our next meeting is going to be Friday, November 19th at 1 o'clock. On the agenda will be how Rails engages staff at all levels from all types of libraries. And Jennifer McIntosh will give a report on trends and challenges of academic libraries. We will also do the 6-month review of closed session minutes. As a reminder, we will not have a meeting in December. And hopefully we'll get more great news from the Illinois State Library.
Hint, hint.
It's like that actualization technique, right? If you say it, you put it out in the universe.
There you go. So is there anything else we need to deal with at our next meeting? Okay.
That I know of.
Okay, at this time, the board will move into a closed session to discuss matters pertaining to collective negotiation.
Bye.
Collective negotiation.
As per
Compliance Statute, Chapter 120, Paragraph 2, Section 2C2, which states, exceptions, a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects. Collective negotiations matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. May I have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved, it's Chris.
Chris moved, okay, second?
Second, Karen.
Karen, second, thank you. Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes, excuse me. Ellie Cox,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Howenthal,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Beth Teppin,
Yes.
Alex Vancina,
Yes.
Karen Voidick,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, number 14, it's time to adjourn. Thank you all for your attendance. And I hereby adjourn this meeting at 3:00 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance and see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.